The Galactic Research Station Zenith 7 floated in the silence of space, a hub where dozens of species worked side by side in the name of xenobiology and interstellar cooperation. For most inhabitants, the cafeteria served nutrition paste efficiently calibrated to meet each species. Dietary requirements: bland, safe, adequate. Myra Hale had other ideas. The human biologist had converted a corner of her quarters into what she called a proper kitchen, complete with a portable heating unit, magnetic cookware, and a small collection of earth spices she'd smuggled aboard in violation of at least 3 importation regulations. She didn't care. After 6 months of choking down beige slurry, she'd decided that survival meant more than just nutrients. It meant flavor. Tonight, she was making her grandmother's recipe: slow-cooked beef stew with onions, carrots, potatoes, and a secret blend of herbs that filled her quarters with an aroma so rich it seemed to have physical presence. The scent crept through the ventilation system like a living thing, winding through corridors and seeping under doorways. Myra hummed as she stirred, unaware that half the station had paused mid-task, nostrils flaring, trying to identify the intoxicating smell that had invaded their carefully controlled environment. In the junior researchers' wing, 3 Velern cubs huddled together, their sensitive noses twitching. The Velern were a species that resembled Earth's otters crossed with small bears covered in soft fur with large, expressive eyes and dexterous paws. Their homeworld's cuisine consisted primarily of raw proteins and bitter roots. Nothing in their evolutionary history had prepared them for the olfactory assault of caramelized onions and simmering meat. "What is that?" whispered Joran, the smallest of the 3, his ears flat against his head in bewilderment. Tovik, the eldest at barely 7 standard years, stood on his hind legs and sniffed deeply. His eyes widened. "I don't know. But I need to find out." The 3rd cub, Sala, clutched her datapad nervously. "We shouldn't bother the researchers during personal time," Mother said. "Mother isn't here," Tovik interrupted, already padding toward the door. "And when has following rules ever taught us anything interesting?" The cubs followed the scent like a trail of breadcrumbs, their small forms darting through the station's corridors. Crew members smiled as they passed the Velern young, were the station's unofficial mascots. Their presence a reminder that Zenith 7 wasn't just a workplace but a community. The smell grew stronger as they approached the residential section, eventually leading them to a door marked Dr. M. Hale, Xenobiology. Tovik raised a paw and knocked, his claws making tiny clicking sounds against the metal. Inside, Myra froze mid-stir. She wasn't expecting visitors. Setting down her spoon, she opened the door to find 3 small furry faces staring up at her with expressions of desperate hope. Hello?" Myra said, crouching down to their level. Tovik's whiskers twitched. Up close, the smell was overwhelming, a symphony of savory notes that made his mouth water in ways he didn't understand. Is... The smell ... He struggled to find words in standard galactic, his usual eloquence abandoned. Myra's confusion transformed into amusement. "You smelled my cooking?" 3 heads nodded in unison, their eyes pleading. She bit back a laugh. The cubs looked like they might cry if she sent them away. "Are you hungry?" "We've had our nutrition allocation," Sala said quickly, ever the rule follower. "But that smell, it's like nothing we've ever experienced." Myra glanced back at her pot of stew, then at the cubs. She'd made enough for 3 meals, planning to stretch it across the week. But the expressions on those furry faces were impossible to resist. Besides, wasn't cultural exchange part of the station's mission? "Wait here," she said. The cubs watched through the doorway as Mira moved around her quarters, muttering to herself. She returned moments later, shaking her head. "I don't have enough bowls." "Do you have something that she didn't finish the sentence?" Tovik had already pulled a container from the small pack at his side. Then Joran produced another. Then Sala. All 3 stood holding transparent food containers, their tails wagging with barely contained excitement. Myra burst out laughing. "You came prepared?" "We were optimistic," Tovik admitted, his ears flushing purple with embarrassment. Still chuckling, Myra invited them inside and ladled generous portions of stew into each container. The cups sat in a semicircle on her floor, containers clutched in their paws, steam rising into their faces. For a moment they simply inhaled, eyes closed in reverence. "It's beautiful," Joran whispered. "It's food," Myra corrected gently. "You're supposed to eat it." Tovik was the first to taste it. His eyes went wide, his entire body going rigid. Then he made a sound something between a purr and a sob and began eating with single-minded intensity. The other cubs followed suit, and for several minutes, the only sounds were satisfied chewing and occasional whimpers of joy. "What is this called?" Sala asked between bites, her usual nervousness completely forgotten. "Beef stew. It's a traditional human comfort food." "Comfort?" Tovik looked up, gravy on his whiskers. "This doesn't just comfort, it makes me understand why humans conquered their homeworld despite being small and weak." Myra raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "If humans can create this," Tovik explained seriously, "then no challenge would be too great. I would cross a star system for another bowl of this." "I would cross several star systems," Jorn added. Myra found herself unexpectedly touched. She'd cooked this meal as an act of defiance against institutional blandness, a small rebellion to maintain her humanity in the sterile environment of space. She hadn't expected it to become a bridge between species. As the cubs scraped their containers clean, Tovik looked up at her with solemn eyes. "Dr. Hale, would you teach us to make this?" Myra considered the request. Teaching alien children to cook human food probably violated a dozen protocols. But then again, she'd already violated the importation regulations. What was one more rule broken in the name of cultural exchange? "On one condition," she said. "You teach me something from Velern culture in return." The cubs' faces lit up like stars going nova. "Deal!" they said in unison. As Mira sent the cubs back to their quarters, containers now empty and carefully clean, she reflected on the strange turn her evening had taken. She'd come to Zenith 7 to study alien biology, to understand the vast diversity of life in the cosmos. But tonight, she'd learned something more important: that connection could be forged over a simple meal, that the space between species wasn't as vast as it seemed, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from data and analysis, but from opening your door when small, hopeful faces appeared at your threshold. Outside her quarters, 3 young Velern walked back to their wing, already planning tomorrow's visit. Behind them, the smell of home lingered in the corridors like a promise.